Alright, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to week 7 of the Pokemon Speedruns Draft League. This is my team builder for week number 7 against DralzX and the Blackpool Blastoise. I'm F-Fan Crazy as always, here with the Jacksonville Jumbo Clawitzers. Clawitzers even. Last week, just a quick recap. We had a tough loss to Ranger Squid and the New England Mudkips. We're looking to bounce back. Right now, the Alolan division is very, very, very close. I have not played my match this week, but before my match, we're pretty much neck and neck. Like, Gino's at, I think, 6-1. I'm at 4-2, about to be either 5-2 or 4-3. We have another 4-3 in Blainister, and we have a 3-4 in Sunrakasha. So anybody could win the division still. Anybody could be bumped from the playoffs still. It's pretty crazy. So let's look forward to this week. Let's look at the enemy team. So as you can see, just as an overview, the Blastoise have a lot of Calm Mind users and special attackers in general. But in kind of a big picture, they're almost like the quintessential example of a balanced offense team. So they got enough bulk to tank some hits, but they also have some setup sweepers, and they have some physical options that are very, very powerful as well on the other end. So let's start with the Z Crystal users. First one is Raikou. Raikou is one of the Gen 2 legendary dog trio, or legendary gophers, whatever you want to call them. We actually have 2 out of 3 here, and Arcanine is just doing a sweet Entei impression. But basically, Calm Mind is the most common set for Raikou, but it can also use non-Z Crystal options such as Subtoxic. It could be a Scarf user, although against my team I don't see that would be necessary. It can run Specs, it can run Assault Vest. It doesn't have the best coverage options. It gets like Stab, and then it gets like, I think, Shadow Ball, and usually Hidden Power, and then either like Calm Mind Substitute, that kind of stuff. So it's also really important to know, and we'll talk about this later, that he can't run HP Grass and HP Ice at the same time. So that's going to be important for later on. Other Z Crystal user is Roserade. Roserade is a really aggressive offensive Spike and Toxic Spike user. It can be sort of like Suicide Lead with Focus Sash. It can obviously, in this case, be run with the Z Crystal for more offensive power. Also, it gets access to Sleep Powder and Technician boosted Hidden Powers, which are really good. So, like, for example, Hidden Power Fire does a lot of damage to, say, a Scizor. It can be run Z, Sash, Scarf, or Specs. And obviously it's a special attacker. Other notable threats, or just threats in general, Clefable. Clefable is one of the best Pokemon in Tier 1, I think. It's really, really awesome. It can be run as a defensive pivot and sort of act like a Blissey/Chansey Light, but also it can be a Calm Mind user. Big trend you'll see. We've already gotten to 2 Calm Mind options. It gets Wish and Heal Bell, so it can be a Cleric. It can also has 2 really good abilities in both Magic Guard, which prevents it from taking residual or secondary damage from effects, so it can't take toxic damage. It can't take Will-O-Wisp burn damage. It can't take spikes. It can't take toxic spikes. It can't take Stealth Rock. Any effect that isn't direct damage, it won't take damage from. And it also gets Unaware, which allows it to ignore its opponent's stat boosts. Roush has mentioned a few times that it's possible that Unaware Clefable would have helped him in some weeks. And because I have DralzX on my team, it's certainly possible that Unaware Clefable could come out, because that would be a relatively good way to neuter it. And then, yeah, there's a lot of really good options on Clefable. It gets Stealth Rock, it gets Toxic, it gets Thunder Wave. So I think it even gets Encore. So it has a lot of really cool moves that it gets, and I really love Clefable, and it's actually a relatively scary threat for my team this week. So next up, Latias. So third Calm Mind option so far, as you might again notice, there's a lot of options for Calm Mind on this team. But notably not a Z Crystal user, so we don't have to worry about that. So it can be run bulkier, more defensive than Latios, which is what we faced 2 weeks ago with Sunrakasha. It can be run Calm Mind or Scarf or Specs, or just more like bulky leftover Z kind of set. Scarf is possible that he brings it this week due to Charizard X. but unlike against Thunderkasha, I think his team has more options to beat CharizardX, so he might not feel compelled to run it. And the Calm Mind set is actually pretty annoying for my team. Of all the Calm Mind users, I think this is like his best option running Calm Mind this week, if he doesn't bring multiple options with Calm Mind. Speaking of Calm Mind, the last Calm Mind option we will talk about, and probably the quintessential Calm Mind user, is Suicune. Suicune has been Calm Minding all the way since, as soon as it could, basically, and Crocoon is a very, very classic set from Generation 2. Basically, it's a rest talk set, and that allows it to have incredibly good longevity. It's really important to note that this week, he cannot run, well, he could, but it's unlikely that he'll run a Suicune set that only has a water move as the attacking move, because commonly Suicune will only run Scald, maybe Surf as its only attacking move. But because I have a certain Seismitoad, that's not viable. So it'll either have to be a 2 attacking moves or just Ice Beam. And that's important for figuring some things out. Obviously, if he runs only water moves, hey, I have a brick wall to beat it. So next up, talk about Crocodile really quickly. Crocodile is a very often Scarfed or Life Orb. It has both Intimidate and Moxie, and importantly Pursuit for certain mons like, say, Celebi. Especially useful if you have a Scarf on it. It also gets access to Stab, Earthquake, and Knockoff, and it's a very good ground type against my team. It could be run to beat Charizard. We'll talk about that in a second. Yeah, it's very good overall. I do expect him to bring it this week. Next up, we'll talk about his Mega, which is Mega Heracross. So Mega Heracross is kind of what I was talking about earlier. Is a lot of his team is special attackers, but Mega Heracross is an enormous physical wall breaker. It just destroys. And it has Skill Link, which allows moves like Rock Blast and Pimissile, which hit multiple times, to always hit 5 times, meaning that essentially you're running like an enormous base power move if you add up all the hits. It commonly will run Swords Dance, but you could run 4 attacks, but it has absolutely astronomical 185 base attack, which is absurd. And it's slow enough, so we do have options, but it's going to be one of those things where we need to kill this thing cleanly, because if it keeps getting in sort of after other things with his dies, I'm going to have to keep sacking things to beat it if I don't kill it early. Last few options here. Arcanine is a really good bulky fire type, very similar to Incineroar, with Intimidate and Flash Fire options. It can run both physical or special moves, which, even though it's bulky, it can deal, that distinction is important because it depends on if certain things can tank hits from it. Also gets Recovery and Morning Sun, very important. It can run Will-O-Wisp and Snarl, and I think Toxic as well. And it's a decent option this week. Again, it does okay at checking CharizardX. So next up we have Talonflame. Talonflame, unfortunately, is not nearly, well, probably fortunately, realistically, is not as nearly as good as it was in Gen 6 because they nerfed Gale Wings. Gale Wings gives priority to all flying moves, but now it only works if you're at full health, whereas before it didn't matter. Meaning that if you hit it with Stealth Rocks, which it's already weak to, it's not going to get priority. It's already still fast, and it hits very, very hard, so it's possible he brings it anyways, but I don't think he will. It really just depends on what he thinks I'm bringing. If he thinks that I might bring, like, Celebi and Virizion and Scrafty, for example, and Scizor, all of which are weak to it, then maybe he brings it. So we'll see how that goes. Next up, we got Probopass. Probopass is a Steel Trapper with Magnet Pull, and it's a decent option this week to trap Scizor, who I'm using to, well, trap Latios. So we're kind of got a little bit of a chain going there. I do need to be very skittish with Scizor if he has it. It can set up Stealth Rocks. It's just like a decent defensive option. It has Magnet Rise, so it can't get hit by ground type moves if it sets up. So that's a problem for someone like Landorus. But overall, we do have decent options against it, so I'm not super scared. But it is a decent option because, like, if that's in my biggest plan of killing Latios with Scizor is a lot harder, because then I can't reliably do it without sacrificing Scizor to the Probopass. Lastly is Cofagrigus. Cofagrigus is sort of a weird mon. It's like it can be run defensively, sort of like Dusknoir Dusclops, where it's like a physical wall with like, you know, those types of I think it gets Will-O-Wisp, like defensive options. But you can also run it as like a nasty plot sweeper, but it's usually run in Trick Room, which this isn't really a Trick Room team, or really doesn't even have a Trick Room option that it wants to use. I don't know that he'll bring it. I haven't really prepped much for it, to be honest. So if he brings it, it's my fault for not prepping for it, and we'll just have to wing it. But I don't know that it's powerful enough to realistically do much, unless I'm missing something. I very well could be. But overall, that's the rest of his team. So now quickly going over to my team. So first thing you'll notice, for all the talk of me having DralzX, it's on the bench this week. It's a bit of a weird thing. I didn't ever expect to bench DralzX, and it's also possible it's not correct for me to bench it this week, just because it was raw power. But I felt like he was going to be very, very cognizant of DralzX, like that was going to be his main focus, and he has a lot of options that can hurt it. Like he has Clefable, especially unaware Clefable, he has potentially Choice Scarf Latias, he has Suicune, which can switch into hits, he has Crocodile, which can potentially either revenge it if it's not Dragon Dance, or do a lot of damage, and has Intimidate. He has Intimidating Arcanines. Like, there's a lot of things on his team that, you know, he has Raikou that can be Scarfed and outspeed it and do a lot of damage on sort of a revenge kill. So, like, there's a lot of different options he has that if he doesn't want to lose to DralzX, he can make sure he doesn't lose to it. And I just felt like I wanted a bunch of other things on my team this week. So, let's talk about what we do have. First thing first is Porygon 2. I'm not on it, but here we are. Porygon 2 was the first Pokemon I wanted to bring this week because of Psych Up. I almost ran this 2 weeks ago, but I realized in that matchup that his Thundercrush's Latios was never bringing Calm Mind because he needed Scarf because of his team comp. This week, he has potentially 4 Calm Mind users, and Psych Up is very good at beating those, especially Suicune and Raikou. Psych Up plus T-Bolt does an absolute number to Suicune. Psych Up plus T-Bolt, I should say, if it's running Calm Mind, especially if it's Procune, it's going to have a hard time beating me. EVs are out of the box, but I kept trying to find other spreads, but this one just ends up being very good a lot of the time. So even though it's kind of standard spread, we're running it. I really wanted to run Analytic this week instead of Trace, because I'm going to be slower than a lot of the things I'm trying to kill. And it would help the kind of the counterplay a little faster. But I'm worried about a little bit about Unaware Clefable, where like that makes it a lot harder for Porygon 2 to do anything to Clefable if it's Unaware and Calm Mind. And it has some benefits with like PP stalling with pressure against the 2 legendary dogs, and like Intimidate Crook might come up. So that's kind of, you know, maybe Flash Fire Arcanine might come up. Like there's some potential reasons to run. I can also reverse trap Magnet Pull the Probopass, although that might be a little bit sketchier because I don't know that I'm going to be able to kill it very easily. But that's kind of the main reason I didn't go for Analytic. I do think it's possible Analytic goes better, but I'm scared and I'm just gonna run. I'm just gonna run Trace. Also, next mon on the team, Neolego. I'm running Assault Vest Neolego, which is a set I've been thinking about running for a few weeks now. This, you know, Neolego has really good special defense. Like, it's really bulky, naturally, so with special defense side at least. The set and spread here is basically just to tank as many special hits as possible while doing the most damage possible. The speed EVs are to be able to outspeed non-Scarf Crocodiles, although I don't know how often I'm going to need to do it that. But the kind of idea behind this set was Clear Smog. Like, Clear Smog beats up on all the Calm Mind options, barring Latias. Like, it does pretty well against Clefable. It also just destroys Clefable with Sludge Wave. It has very good matchup against Raikou, because it beats both the sort of sub-toxic version of Raikou, and it also beats the Calm Mind variant of Raikou pretty easily with Clear Smog and just damage. Also has positive matchups against Roserade, because I'm able to outspeed it, and I'm just very especially bulky, and do a lot of damage with Psyshock. I have a good matchup against Arcanine. If it doesn't hit me with like I think it gets Bulldoze. And then I can also revenge kill Heracross if it's at half health or less. So yeah, Neolego's kind of just a big sponge this week on the special side, since there's so many special attackers that can potentially tank. Next on the docket, we have Landorus T. Lando this week, primary Heracross check. EV to tank a hit and Oko with Fly. Z. Other than that, this Lando set, it was a little bit stretched too thin, and I just decided to make sure it could beat make sure it could beat the Heracross whenever possible. And then the EVs are mostly for that, but I do have 252 speed to outspeed Roserade, which I decided was worth investing in speed for. It's worth noting that, again, Raikou cannot run HP Ice and Grass. So, and it's more likely to run HP Ice because of Lando, because that's going to be a more obvious, like, thing. But then that frees up my next Mon on my team. Oh, also, worth noting, Landorus is decently good against Crocodile also, and as well as things like non-Magnet Rise Probopass, and pretty decent against most Arcanines. So Landorus can do other things. It's just that it's primarily there for the Heracross. But the HP Ice, HP Grass thing is really important for my next Mon, which is Seismitoad. So we talked about Seismitoad potentially just absolutely brick-walling Suicune. Seismitoad here is basically, here's a pulse check. Like, is your Suicune able to beat this Seismitoad? Did you remember to bring a non-water move? Okay. You know, can your Raikou set beat this? Or are you too worried about the Landorus and you brought HP Grass instead of HP Ice? If you're not running those two options, then this Seismitoad is going to do a number. The EVs are really weird. They're really spread out, but the attack EVs are necessary to OHKO Raikou with Earthquake. Special attack investment lets me do the most damage against Crocodile and Suicune and Arcanine. Suicune's a bit of a weird one because, like, with Calm Mind, it's really hard to kill it, even with this, but because I can just sit there and just infinity tank water moves, it's basically there to make sure that he ran a nice move to keep, like, I'm keeping him honest, essentially. Run a different move besides just a water move. Overall, not the most spectacular. Expert Belt helps it net KOs that it couldn't otherwise, but I have no recovery on this set, so other than switching into water moves, it's going to be a little bit taxed. But it should help against some of his options, and it's also decent against, like, Crocodile, Suicune, Arcanine. It's also good against Probopass and can do okay against Talonflame. So, defensive spread, I don't actually remember exactly what it was for, but it was spicy, whatever it was. Okay, next up. Back to a very comfortable set for me, which is Choice Band Scizor. Same Scizor I ran a couple weeks ago against the Latios. This time we're running it against the Latias. It's there to beat Pursuit Trap Latias. Worth noting, again, HP Fire, incredibly scary. If he's cognizant of that, then he might be in trouble. The Scizor might meet an untimely demise. But also, Probopass is potentially an issue. I can U-turn out, so if I'm predicting Probopass switching in, I can U-turn out to play it safe early, plus that covers for him getting frisky and staying in with Lati, assuming it doesn't have HP Fire, because I might kill it even still with U-turn, but I definitely do a lot of damage if I don't. Yeah, I OHKO most of the time after Pursuit, if I recall correctly, assuming it's not too bulky, of a Latias. And then also, I can potentially predict the Probopass switch in Superpower. Bullet Punch in the late game with Choice Band does a lot of damage to just, like, a lot of random things. This is also my other option against Clefable, because it doesn't want to take a Bullet Punch to the face. That's the two main jobs it has, is Clefable and Lati. And then, like I said, we can potentially bait in things like Probopass with Superpower, but U-turn will also be useful in the mid-game as well. So, yeah, pretty standard. Unfortunately, can't really get too creative with this particular type of Scizor, and you need the Choice Band for the power to kill Lati. You can't go Life Orb because it just doesn't do enough damage. I'm not a big fan of Swords Dance Scizor unless their team is particularly susceptible to it, but because it's so easy to prep and put HP Fire on some Pokemon, it's hard to realistically know that you're going to get Swords Dance off, so I really like the more hit and run option than Choice Band. Speaking of hit and run, last option on the team this week is Hoopa. Hoopa U, this is the safety net for the team this week. Choice Scarf. It can revenge kill Latias. It can revenge kill Clefable. It can do massive damage to Raikou. It can revenge kill Heracross. Once I don't need Scarf, if I don't need Scarf to beat, say, Lati anymore, then I can trick it over to Suicune and cripple it. if it's not like a weird non-setting up Suicune that would benefit from it. I can also destroy Roserade and Grigus and Probopass with this particular set. Well, not so much Probopass, but the trick also does a number on Probopass, so Probopass can tank a few more hits because I don't have anything super effective against it. But yeah, mostly there for the other things earlier I mentioned. So it's here to plug holes and revenge kill things, and that's what it's going to do. So overall, main focus of the team is going to be Cam Porygon 2, use their setup to our advantage, and you know, making sure I Pursuit Trap, Lati, and then I think that overall, probably Hoopa's going to be able to clean a lot of things up in the mid-game, and whatever's left over, we'll hopefully be able to win from there. Hopefully this week I come out with a W. It's really important this week, because if I don't, then I'm at very much in the middle of the pack in our division, and at that point, it's literally a scrum to beat it. So this is, you know, everyone else in the division won this week except Gino, but Gino's already ahead of us, and we're already 2 games back on Gino before that. So everyone else won this week, meaning that I need to win to keep up. Hopefully we can get there, and good luck to DralzX, and hopefully we can maintain the 2nd place spots in the division. Peace out, everybody.